All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. How are you? How are you doing? I hope that this Thursday is treating you well, and I hope that you had a very good week. And I want to thank you for joining us on this webinar about management skills and techniques for engineers. I hope that you find the content of the webinar helpful. We're conducting this webinar from Dubai, and it is sunny outside. The weather is fantastic, great weather these days. So if you happen to be in the Gulf, you probably know the weather is great. However, I've heard some news about some heavy rain in the eastern region of Saudi and in Kuwait, and I know that there are lots of issues over there. So probably engineers are busy trying to figure out what to do in order to stop some of the challenges that are facing the infrastructure there. So I welcome you, and I want to welcome some of the familiar faces and familiar names. So Taysir, welcome back. Khalil, Hamad, welcome back everybody. Abdul Malik, good to see you there. Rama, thank you for being with us. And if I missed any names, please forgive me. I want to thank you all for taking the time to be with us today. So let's go ahead and then start. I usually start with a quick introduction about Meirc training and consulting. And we also like to introduce myself a little bit, so at least you know where I'm coming from. I also like to take you through the objectives of this course, and then we dive into the webinar. And there will be some questions, by the way. They are not difficult questions for you, I'm sure. However, it is part of the interaction between us. So this way, you know, you're interacting with the webinar. So I might ask you a yes/no question, and then you answer based on that, and we'll share with you the results. I like to mention also at the beginning of this webinar that many of you would like to receive copies of this presentation, and we are more than happy to share a PDF copy with you. Please take note of the email at the end of the webinar, and if you once you spot the email, make sure that you send us an email and we'll send you back right away. Normally we should also send you that anyway, because many of you fill out the form to join the webinar, but nonetheless, once you send it to us, we know that you're interested in having a copy. All right, so let's go ahead and join. We'll go ahead. We're going to be talking for about an hour. We hopefully wrap up things around 3:30. So I hope that you find this hour valuable for you and for your time, and you take as much as possible. And hopefully, you will also find it useful enough for you to join us on one of our future courses, and I will share these courses, the schedule for these courses at the end of the webinar as well. So my name is Jamal Saeed, and I'm a partner with Meirc. I am myself an engineer. However, as an engineer, I'm an electrical engineer, and I have an interesting story to tell you. But let me wait until I get to that point to tell you about it a little bit more. But I also have a Master's in Business Administration. I have more than 25 years of corporate experience. The rest of that experience has been compiled with Meirc Training and Consulting as a consultant, and now I'm a partner. So why don't we know Meirc a little bit? So for those of you who are familiar with this presentation or the startup, please forgive us, but be patient with us. For those newcomers, we like to tell them about Meirc a little bit. So first of all, Meirc is 60 years old. So we're celebrating this year 60 years of existence. And that's not a small number, guys, ladies and gentlemen. This is a fantastic, fantastic achievement for a company here in the Middle East. 60 years is longer than many institutions and countries that we know. So we have been around for some time. The founder of this company, Mr. Simon Siksik, I think did a wonderful job in creating a culture that can last this long. And I insist on culture, values, because these are very critical for any companies that you work for. Meirc is made up today of two companies. One is Meirc Training and Consulting, and which you see the details here on your left-hand side. And this is the mother company, you can say. And as you can see, we have lots of public programs in English and Arabic. We operate across the Middle East, Africa, Asia, and Europe. And we also conduct lots of in-house courses and lots of consulting services. On the right-hand side, we see Plus Training, a company that was established in 2014. And we focus a lot on the technical side of things. So if you are interested in developing your technical side and our industry-specific training, please do visit us. On our website, you will find the possibility to navigate to either one, and accordingly you can find your way to our courses. We have a wonderful website, very easy to navigate, very easy to search. So please always check our website, and whenever you receive an email from us, always click on it, because you know what, we are adding multitude of courses every year, and we would love to see you and hear from you. And if you have any ideas about courses that you feel that are important for us to run, by all means share that with us. We'll be more than happy to put our resources behind these courses, and this way we can deliver to the market something that is more current and up to date. Even though we're trying very hard to be out there, but believe me, in light of the change, that's taking place today, it's amazing how things are changing so fast. Now, so who are Meirc? Well, Meirc very quickly stands for, as you can see here, this is the name of the company: mastery of the content, excellence in what we do, innovation, reliability, client centricity. This is our vision over here, to be the most trusted partner in developing excellence for generations to come. Our slogan is to be your development, our passion. However, the mission, I'm not going to go through it in detail, because I want to respect the time that you have put here, because if I go through every slide and in every detail, we will not finish in 1 hour. But nonetheless, this is for you to read very quickly and scan through it. These are the programs that we cover. As you can see, it's a very rich portfolio, and it's every portfolio, every segment of this portfolio is just rich with program. So please don't hesitate to contact us and let us know how we can serve you. A little bit about myself. So this is the facilitator here, Jamal Saeed. And as I mentioned, I'm a partner with Meirc. I have a degree in electrical engineering, but the funny part is I never used it. So you might say, Jamal, how come you are giving this course? Well, it is true, I'm an electrical engineer by heart, or in my heart, but I have dealt with many engineering projects, and especially on the IT front. The fact that I worked for many telecommunication companies and many IT companies, I had the chance to dabble with engineering and deal with engineers quite a bit. So that's the thing that I like a lot, is that I have dealt with, you can say, hundreds of engineers in these companies, especially when it comes to the companies that are very close to my heart, Sun Microsystems and Cisco from an IT perspective. And also at PepsiCo International, we dealt with lots of engineers, those who were manning the operations and working with the bottlers and trying to run the mechanical and electrical side of things. So I had the chance to work a lot with engineers. However, I'm going to be raising my hand and say, I never practiced my engineering by myself, but I saw other people practicing it, and I saw the challenges they were facing whenever they moved from an engineering role to a management role. And that's what this course is all about. I'm here to talk to you about is, when you are an engineer, how do you move to the management side of things and be a successful manager? I have no doubt in my mind that you are a successful engineer. But when you start managing and you start supervising, that's a different story. And I think this is where I can lend a lot of hand or a lot of expertise, because I have been a manager and supervisor, a leader on many fronts, and I'd like to share with you through this course some of my experience. So as you can see from my experience here, I have dealt with Pepsi. I have worked for Pepsi for about 8 years, capacity as an IT manager, and then I moved to Sun Microsystems, which is now part of Oracle, where I assumed several roles. I stayed there for about 10 years, most of them in the management side of things, and we dealt with many engineering companies on all fronts, and lots of partners, especially the partners. And then with Cisco, the same thing. My role at Sun Microsystems, the last role I played was general manager in Saudi Arabia. Very interesting role. It taught me a lot about leadership, taught me a lot about dealing with people, influencing people. And the same thing with Cisco. With Meirc, I do lots of training on leadership management, strategy and planning. Project management, yes, I do project management quite a bit, negotiations and communications, and other people skills, programs and career development and project management. So if you have any questions, please do reach out and send me an email, and I'll be more than happy to interact with you. I'd love to hear from you. And by the way, I am on LinkedIn. So if you happen to be a LinkedIn user, look me up. It's very easy to find me, Jamal Saeed, and you will see pretty much the same picture. So, and hopefully we will be able to be in touch. So let's go ahead and cover the objectives of the course or this webinar. What I'm trying to do here is I would like to give you a flavor about functions of management, of planning, organizing, directing, and controlling in a team environment. And then I'd like to talk about, some skills about project management. Honestly, with all fairness, I want to be fair to you. I'll give you a bit of a flavor on project management, but in the course, we do expand a little bit more. But if you are keen on a project management course, please do join us, because we have some very good material and some fantastic instructors. But I cover project management because I believe it's very important in this course to be covered. So you will see how I cover it, and hopefully it will give you some insight. Also, we talk about KPIs because now you are managing performance. It's not enough anymore to deliver projects. It is important that you manage performance, that of yours, as well as the people around you. And now you are a manager, so you have to manage the competencies, the performance, and the outcomes. Don't forget the outcomes of your work. And then, of course, we have to improve our communication. For me, as somebody in this field, I always believe that communication is the foundation of everything. So please remember that our communication, as far as I am concerned personally, it is one of the top most important skills that you have to develop and you will ever use. And it spans all careers and all specialities. It doesn't matter. You have to be a very good communicator. And then, of course, we talk about team building, and then we talk about how to solve problems. Again, as you can see, the webinar is a bit heavy, but I'm trying to touch upon the points, give you a chance, and either you join us on the courses, or on the other front, you can expand on these points. This way, you can further your studies and or your knowledge about these topics. So let's go into the talk about objectives. We did that already. I'd like to mention something here, and I apologize if I'm jumping back and forth here. I'm trying to find my way, and now I think I'm going to do it the correct way. So just to let you know that at Meirc, we have signed up with some of the leading knowledge providers. And if you join us on these courses, many times we give you access to relevant material. And so we call it blended learning, where you join the course and you continue your education, online education, by this provider who can provide you information, further information on the topic that we cover with you. So believe me, you're getting your money's worth. When you join a Meirc course, you get a lot of benefits. And that's one thing that we are very, very good at. And that's something that we have worked very good and very diligently over the years. So here we go. So we are going to be, the first thing I like to talk about is we transitioned from a technical expert to a functional manager. So here comes your first question, okay? And I want to thank the Rama for congratulating us on the 60th anniversary. Rama, thank you very much, man. So here we go. Engineers can never be managers, true or false? Let me see. Here, what I will do is I'm going to ask you for the survey, and I'm going to show it to you. So if you can go ahead and vote. Supposedly, you should be able to see the screen in front of you. And I already see, oh, that's fantastic response. That's great. So we already see some very, okay, there you go. Wow. Okay. So I'll give everybody a chance here to respond. So we have some answers. We have one person saying true and the rest saying false. Okay, so let me end the voting right now. And I like, oh, fantastic. Somebody slipped in at the end. I'll share the information. So here it is. So we have one true and somebody saying false. So, and it is false because leadership can be taught. And that's something I like to remind you, that never underestimate the leader that you have within. And it starts with us, right? So I always ensure that whenever you are moving to a management role, it's very important that you understand that leadership is something we work on, we can train, we can develop. Yes, you may not reach the level of leadership that somebody who has it naturally, but even that, I believe that you can be a fantastic leader. So as far as I'm concerned, engineers can be managers. And this is something we work on very, very hard. and we definitely have done a wonderful job with many engineers who have come to our courses, or many people. We have some fantastic examples of people who were engineers and they became CEOs, by the way. So here we go. People with best technical skills make the best manager supervisor. Now, so it is, if you jump, if you transition right away from a technical role to a manager role, we have a problem. Because we found out that if you transition without any preparation, then that's where problems begin. How often have we found this to be untrue? The truth is that the knowledge and skills of management make one an excellent manager and leader and manager. So you have to develop this managerial skills. It's not enough to be an engineer and then move into management. And that's what we're talking about. So an engineer can be a manager, but they have to acquire the knowledge and the skills of management. And this is why we would like to tell you about this important aspect. So like engineering and technical skills, management skills can be learned, and it can be learned in a very good way, but you have to approach it with an open mind. You have to approach it with the fact that I'm willing to change. I'm willing to change my approach to things, because as an engineer, you probably worked in a certain way. As a manager, you probably have to adopt different approach to doing things. So we need to learn how to do what to do in order to ease our transition. And I call it transition because it is an integral part of moving from one aspect or one mindset to a new mindset. Remember, technically, you're dealing with technical issues. Managers, you're dealing a lot with people. So these are two different baskets that you have to deal with. Now that is being said, so engineers are usually promoted for many reasons. One of the key things that they are promoted is because you have fantastic technical skills. And in many ways, you can manage budgets to some extent. But how about motivating people? How about getting the best out of people? How about aligning people behind their resources and behind their activities? Okay, so it's very important that we understand this transition. So it's very important that we translate the engineer. He has to understand that their skills have to translate somehow to becoming a manager and supervisor. This means that they have to adapt some new skills and some activities. So this is some interesting statistic I'd like to share with you, and to some extent they are alarming, but it's not for you. This is for you to avoid in many ways, okay? So within the first 18 months on the job, up to 40% of the engineers failed in one way or another. That's a bit scary, by the way. That's not a good number. We like to reduce it. I like you to reduce it, because the main reason is failure to build relationships. Look how beautiful that is. Because engineers have been doing things more on the technical side, solving problems technically, but all of a sudden when they become managers, they have to deal with people and they have to build relationships. They understand that working in a team is a must. They have to understand that solving problems together in a team is more important. And this is why you have to develop different skills. So now, your main purpose as supervisor or manager is to lead your organization into a successful future. So if you want to achieve managerial excellence, make sure that you avoid managerial damaging mistakes. What am I talking about? Being very possessive, for example, not listening to people, not being prepared for your job, and not developing people. So these are mistakes that are quite damaging, and we see it unfortunately many times. As a matter of fact, whenever I run courses on certified professional managers or other managerial courses or leadership courses, we really get surprised when people come to us and they ask us about certain specific activities that are, to us, should not exist anymore. Because, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, the market is changing quite a bit. So it's very important to understand that today in this market, you have to understand that management has changed. Even management itself has changed from a commanding style into more of an engaging style. So it's very important. As you can see, there's a transition here. So avoid the damaging mistakes of not listening, not developing people, of being insisting on your opinion, of not sharing information. All of these things could be quite damaging, and that's why the 40% is quite high. So here comes John Foster Dulles, who is the 52nd United States Secretary of State, and he said, the measure of success is not whether you have a tough problem to deal with, but whether it is the same problem you had last year. Now look how beautiful that is. So if you are having the problem over and over again, Are you really doing your management job? Are you really managing? Because management is one of the things is that you have to plan. And planning means that you make sure that you are looking at things, um, new things on a regular basis, and the old things, are you solving it? So it's very important that you change your mindset about this particular aspect of things. Another thing that comes from Archibald MacLeish, okay, and he's an American poet, writer, and librarian, okay, of Congress, and he says there's only one thing more painful than learning from experience, and that is not learning from experience. And that's another thing that's very critical, that you as a manager, when you move from an engineer to a management job, you are going to be dealing with lots of people, and you have to develop people. And the thing about it is experience doesn't come just like that. You cannot drink it in a glass of water or a cup of coffee. You have to make mistakes sometimes. And of course, with your right supervision and management, you can make these mistakes much, much less. But the question is, are you giving people a chance to experience and make mistakes to some extent? And are you learning from your mistakes as well? Because experience is, in many ways, learning from mistakes that we acquire during the life of our lifetime. Okay? So the thing is, we have to keep the main thing. The main thing is to keep the main thing. What does it mean? Being busy is not the same as being productive. Productivity can only be defined in terms of results, not activities. And that's something that every CEO will tell you. I measure you based on results. So, my dear friends on this call, on this webinar, please remember that if you want to measure your success, don't measure it how many hours you put. Don't measure it by how many emails you answer. Always measure it by your results. And that's very, very critical. I like to point it out so that you take it to heart. Because many people say, you know what, I have been in this organization 26 years. And then I ask you, okay, what have you done? What are the results that you brought upon or brought about? And that is why it's a big difference. Any CEO will tell you, I want the results. And I would like you to put the head of the CEO and start thinking that way. So keep the main thing the main thing. When we talk about people and managing people, your biggest challenge if you're making that transition from engineer to management is that you have to work on the motivation and you have to work on the ability. And as you can see from this grid, you can see that where you want to be. You want to be at high ability and high motivation. But this doesn't come right away. This takes a bit of time to come. Because if you are on low motivation and low ability, then you have to review your recruitment. You probably are asking, am I recruiting the right people or do I have the right people? But once you decide that I need some new people or some fresh blood, you have to start training them. You have to motivate them and add their ability. Notice you have to make them able to do their job. And you also have to encourage them in many ways. Because at the end of the day, the sign of a very good manager, if they have people who are able and who are motivated. That is the sign of a good manager. Do you have a team that can support you and support your success and the support of the organization? If you don't have such a team, we go back into these boxes and ask ourselves, what can I train my people on and how do I encourage and discipline them? And this is why it is important that you act as a manager. I don't want you to be just the title of a manager. I like you to act the role of the manager. And this is why it is important that you always focus on the ability. How do I train my people? How do I enable them? How do I provide them with the necessary resources? How do I train them? How do I ask them to get certified? How do I challenge them through motivation, through um, um, problem solving, delegation? And on the motivation side, what is it that motivates this person? So this grid is very important. Keep it in mind because you always have to achieve things well and willingly. Well and willingly. When we talk about people, there are certain theories that we look at when it comes to leadership and management. I'm going to share with you very, very much top level theories. That's all. Because I know that time is not to our side on this webinar. Otherwise, we can talk about it in more detail in future courses. But nonetheless, when it comes to theories on leadership, we have the trait theory and we have the behavior theories and the situational theories. When we talk about traits, we believe that people come with certain traits. Now, this is an interesting theory because we try to prove it, but it's difficult to prove. It turns out that, you can teach these traits. So people coming with traits is very weak already because you develop leadership skills through experience. The second one is behavioral. So I'll share with you what does it mean. And the last one is situational. So what do we mean by that? So when it comes to traits, means that you come with these traits built in. So you are able to challenge yourself and you stay focused and you build relationships and you respect others. Of course, these are wonderful traits. But all of these things, they don't come with us. So these things we develop. So the traits theory, in many ways, is something that we ask people to be cognizant of and be aware of, because it's very important that you understand that not everything is born with us. So many things are developed in us, and you develop them through your manager, through yourself, or something like that. Now, how does the trait theory operate? In many ways, here it is. Here is an example of how the trait theory operates. As you can see, leader has certain traits and skills, so they come with those traits. And my fear is that many leaders or many engineers who transition to management, they think that they have the traits of leadership, and unfortunately they discover in a very odd way or a very tough way that they don't have these traits, So the leader starts behaving, and they start trying to influencing the process. That process is influencing a follower and the attributes and the behavior. And as you can see, there's a give and take over here. As you can see, something is being exchanged here. And based on that one, you have some situational variables. Depending on the situation, you vary your leadership style. And accordingly, as you influence people and you influence their behavior, you achieve certain performance outcomes. So in here, in this box, there's lots of exchange between yourself as a behavior leader, leading with certain behaviors, how you're influencing the process and the people, and how the followers are interacting with such influencing and behavior that you're promoting. And for every person that you deal with, you have a certain situation. Now that's very important. Do you understand the situation and do you apply the right leadership to it? That's why we call it another name, situation leadership, which I will talk about in a minute. So your leadership can impact the outcome here. Your leadership can impact the outcome. And that's what we call performance outcomes. And we will talk about performance management in a minute. So this is why you have to keep that in mind. The other side of things, we talk about the behavior when it comes to what was proposed by Robert Blake and Jane Mouton in 1964. And we call it the management grid. And it evaluates behavior here. And there are two dimensions from this perspective. They believe that we have two behavior as people. If you are a leader or a manager, there are two dimensions that you should be concerned with. One that has to do with people, and the other one has to do with production. Which one do you lean more toward is pretty much your behavior or your leadership style. So this is why we share with people this particular grid. As I can see here, this is a particular grid. On the vertical side, you have concern for people. On the horizontal side, you have concern for production. And depending where you are here, we decide what kind of leadership skills you apply. For example, if you are 1-1, you don't have any leadership skills, no managerial skills whatsoever, because you don't have any concern for production and you don't have any concern for people. But if you go to 9-1, you're very much task-oriented. This means that your leadership style or management style focuses a lot on tasks. So you're after goals, you want to achieve goals, but you don't take people into consideration. You don't take motivation into consideration. So that is why sometimes engineers fall into this category, because they want to achieve results, but they forget the people side. And then you have the middle of the road here, right over here, the 5-5 approach, which I call it the 50-50 solution. It is important, but it only gives you 50-50 solutions, as you can see. So it has a bit of concern for people, and it has a concern for production, but it is very important that you always understand that you have something better. The last one has to do with the country club management, is where you have too much concern for people, but you forget the task management. Well, sometimes you need it, but you have to be careful not to fall into the trap of becoming too much into people-oriented and you forget your targets. Okay? And Rama will ask you to answer your questions in a minute, and thank you for raising the questions. Rest assured, we will try to do that. And then we have the team management. Team management means that you have concern for production and you have concern for people. This is a balanced approach of management. And you as an engineer who's transitioning to management, You have probably the task management skills, but you have to focus on the people. Now, based on what Rama's question is, how can you achieve tasks without support from the people? Well, you can be a very dictatorial style of management. You have to do this. You have to do that. So you're always commanding people, bossing people around. Now, the question here is, can you imagine the quality of the work? I assure you that the quality is not going to be that good. Yes, you will achieve the targets, but your people will be running away from you. You will have a very high turnover of individuals in your team. And that is why one of your key prerogatives or objectives is, how do I maintain my team and how do I retain talent in my organization? So that is why, as an engineer, you have to develop the ability to attract people, work with people, develop people, and make sure that they stay for as much as possible because you are investing in them. Now, moving on. So then you have the situational leadership. The situational leadership, I like it quite a bit because this is quite challenging for many engineers, is that you come with a certain style, you probably understood leadership from a certain perspective and you apply it all the time. But the question here is, do you know the situation and do you know which leadership style fits that situation? And that's why in this particular approach, we always ask people, understand the situation, understand the person you're dealing with. Because situational leadership means that you understand the different levels of individuals and their development in the organization, and you also understand the situation that you are in, and accordingly you apply the right skill or the right leadership skill or style to the individual and the situation that you're dealing with. So we have something similar in the following slide. As you can see here, we have certain situations. For example, somebody who is new to the organization, somebody very new. You are an engineer and you just transitioned and you have some people working for you. You hired a few people. They are fresh graduates from the university. Probably because they are fresh graduates, you probably direct them, tell them what to do because they're still fresh. They don't know what to do. But as they become more aware of the job and they become more excited about the job, you have to coach them because they're developing skills and their competence is getting better and their commitment is getting higher. And then, of course, once you do that, they develop high competence, but sometimes their commitment becomes a bit variable. That's why they need your support. And then, of course, toward the bottom left corner, you will see that we have something delegating. Now, that's where I like you to start focusing on more and more, because one of the key research findings that we find all the time, that companies are asking, how can we delegate? Because the amount of work we're doing is just tremendous. So imagine if you have a team, would you be directing them all the time, even though they are ready to be coached? Would you be supporting them, even though they might want to be delegated? And this is something very critical. So this particular grid, which is developed by Hersey and Blanchard, it tells you the supportive behavior that you have versus the directive behavior that you have. As much as possible, it is critical that as your employees grow within the organization, you reduce your directive behavior and supportive behavior, because now you have mature people. This is maturity over here. Maturity level is very, very, very high. So it is your responsibility as a leader and a manager to develop the maturity of your team. And this is something very critical. If your team stays as is, this means that you're not developing them. Yes, you're achieving your tasks, but the team is not developing. But if you develop your team and they become very mature, then they become an asset for you. They can help you achieve your goals and your objectives, and you become a true manager. You become the manager that you want to be and the leader that you want to be. So I just covered 3 styles of leadership. And of course, there are many styles of leadership. Many of them are very modern. Many of them are very exciting. But I wanted to share with you something about leadership, because it is important that you understand that management today is not only management. There's a lot of leadership into the management role today. So situation leadership is not something you do to people, but something you do with people. All right? Now, going on. So there is no single all-purpose leadership style, and this is why it's very important to remember this particular, saying, is that successful leaders are those who can adapt their behavior to meet the demands of their own unique situation. And you as an engineer, you probably, as I said, adopted a certain style because your manager or a leader had that style. And you said, you know what, being bossy works very well with everybody. Okay, it worked in certain situations, but in some other situations, you have to be a very good listener. In some other situations, you have to be a coach. In some other situations, you have to be a visionary, a people who guide others. In some situations, you have to be more democratic and ask people's opinion, and so on and so forth. Leadership is a wonderful, wonderful field. And as engineers and you who transition to management and leadership, I would like you to study it more and understand it more and more. Now, so a leader must analyze each situation and choose the appropriate action to accomplish the mission. What must I do in this situation to best lead my people? Now, here is an interesting story. I don't know if you have heard the story of the manager and the engineer, and this is a very interesting story because I like to tell it to you. Because there was a man here, he was flying in a hot air balloon, realizing that he was lost. He reduced his height and spotted a man below. He descended a bit more and shouted, "Excuse me, can you help me? I promised a friend I would meet him an hour ago, but I don't know where I am." Now, the person on the ground responded, "You are in a hot air balloon hovering approximately 10 meters above the ground. You are between 40 and 41 degrees north latitude and between 59 and 60 degrees west longitude." Now, the man in the balloon said, "You must be an engineer," said the balloonist. The man replied, "But how did you know?" He said, "Well, you answered, everything you told me is technically correct, but I have no idea what to make of your information. And the fact is, I'm still lost." Well, the engineer answered, he said, "Well, you must be a manager." He said, "How did you know that?" He said, "Well, you don't know where you are and where you are going. You made a promise which you have no idea how to keep, and you expect me to solve your problem. The fact is that you are in exactly the same position you were in before we met, but now somehow it is my fault." And I like to tell the stories all the time because at the end of the day, you as an engineer, we have to move away from our technical skills and become more people oriented. And we have to make sure that we share with people, the right kind of information. So going on, so thank you for listening to my little story. I just want to break the ice a little bit. So when we talk about management, we talk about planning, organizing tools and techniques, and this is very critical. So here comes your next question. Let's go into the next question. Okay, planning is one of the key activities of management. Please tell me yes or no. I see some wonderful replies. Well done, fantastic. I'll give everybody just a little bit more time because I know sometimes you're trying to answer. Maybe the line is a bit slow. Maybe you're trying to find your keys about, so your way around your mobile or your computer. Well done. We have 6 responses so far, which is very, very good. Okay. All right. So I will try to end the voting right now, just as I said, out of courtesy of time, nothing else. Okay. Because I appreciate your participation. So I'm going to end the voting and I'm going to share with you results. So all of you said true, and I want to thank you for that. So well done. And that's true. Planning is one of the key activities of management. So now let's move back to this one. So what is management? Well, work types, there are several work types. There are one-off jobs. Example, overhaul of a major plant or equipment. We treat these as projects. And then you have routine jobs. Example, operational things that run on a day-by-day basis. So as you can see, when you are a manager, you're going to get your share of projects and you're going to get your share of operational things. Now, I think to some people, having projects is more exciting than the routine jobs. And for some people, routine jobs excites them and gives them more relaxation and more control. But both of them are going to be on your plate. So how do you go about managing them? Now, all major tasks can be treated as standalone projects, which represent in many ways the situation, the majority of your tasks. Something standalone, you hand it over to somebody and say, go ahead and do it. They do it and then they report on it. The job is done. Thank you very much. But at the same time, if we look at projects, okay, a project is something very specific. a specific task or series of tasks, which one completed will produce a desired results. And a project occurs when you have a goal and a plan to achieve that goal. And as I promised in my introduction, I told you that I'm going to talk a little bit about project management. So, and I tell you, if you are interested in developing project management skills, do it, don't delay. Because project management is an interesting skills and an important skills for any engineers or any managers these days. So projects need to be planned. So planning is important. So well done, you answered correctly. If they need to be managed, okay, very good. They need to be monitored and need to be reviewed. So the objectives of work orders. So in projects, when you work with a project, there's always work orders. And work orders, they come from the user, the beneficiary, saying we need this. So one of the key successes that you're going to achieve when you are an engineer is make sure that your work orders are specific, not overly complex, and if they are, try to divide them into smaller parts. They have to be measurable, verifiable, and they have to be consistent with the resources available in your company. And that's where organization comes in. Because when you are planning, it's very important at the end of the day that whatever resources you have are assigned accordingly, and assigning resources to tasks and projects is organizational activities. So if I show you this picture here, okay, can you guess who is right? Can you look at this picture and tell me who is right and who is wrong? Let's see. Let's see if you can spot who is at fault here. Okay, so Rama is saying the planning. Yeah, that's very good, Rama. Thank you for your sharing. But tell me, from this picture that you see in front of you, who is at fault? Let's see. Lack of communication, that's true. That's true. Khalid is saying the manager. Yes, very true. Well, the thing about it is that, as you can see, the team on your right-hand side has managed to get the track through the tunnel. So at least I know that this team has planned things correctly. This team on this side, they didn't take the coordinates correctly. So probably they end up deviating one small inch at a time, and they ended up, as you can see, this big deviation right over here. And Khalid is telling me, Jamal, it's communication. Well done to all of you. It is lack of communication in many ways. And as I told you, communication is an important part of your success. So here we go. Elements of management. Planning is very important because you're asking the what. Scheduling, you're asking the when. The implementation, company, staff, contractors, you are organizing things. You are organizing the resources. Controlling, you need the KPIs. How do I measure my success? How do I measure the results? And then, of course, reporting. So these are key elements of any management activity that you're doing. And you have to be very good in all of them. You cannot be good in one of them because you are a manager now. So you have to develop some very good planning skills. You have to develop some very good scheduling skills, and so on and so forth. Now, once you're very good with them, you can delegate them. You don't have to keep doing them all the time, but it's very important you become very good at them and then start delegating them once you have a mastery of them. So this takes us to the work breakdown structure. So whenever you have a very big task, you try to break it down to smaller tasks. And if you are a project manager or aspiring project manager, you understand what I'm talking about. That usually when you have a big task, try to break it down to smaller tasks that are more manageable. And once you reach the right level, always make sure that every task has an owner and has a time factor associated with it. Now, possible applications of standards. Now, when it comes to standards, it's ultimately, I cannot stress how important standards are. And one thing that you as an engineer, you're very good at is being good with standards, because I think that comes with your background. But because you are an engineer, you'll find your standards in the planning side, you'll find them in the control side, you'll find them in the feedback side, and you'll find them in the improvement side. When we talk about planning, good productivity measures can be used in the analysis and development plans. So that's standards. Company standards, outside standards, control. Standards will be needed to monitor the progress and compare to the plan. So another set of standards. Feedback. That's the staff completing work orders need to know how they are performing. And the last one is improvement. I'm just going to take a pause here because I see that Khalid and a couple of my friends here online, they're saying that they're only seeing the slides and the sound is a bit not coming across very, very well. how does it look? I'm going to ask my helpful friend here. Yeah. So if you can use your mobile, I understand that if you can use your mobile, it would be better. I wish I can give you more advice here, but listen, stay with us, stick with us. Don't leave. We will be able to resolve this problem, inshallah, very soon. Now, here comes the third question for you. Time management skills are critical for an engineer transitioning to a managerial role. True or false? So here comes the third question. Let's see if you can answer this one. Time management skills are critical for an engineer transitioning to a managerial role. Very good. I have 4 participants participating very actively. And I have the other wonderful participants trying to find the right button. And I'm sure they are keen to answer. So thank you for answering. Great. I'll give everybody just one more chance. Okay, very good. So now I'm going to go ahead and end the voting. I want to thank all of you for your wonderful participation. So I'm going to share the results with you. There you go. So time management is extremely important, my dear friends, is extremely important. Today I was giving a course on managing multiple task priorities and deadlines, and I tell you, time is very important. You have to learn how to deal with time. Let me stop sharing with you, go back to our slides now. So let's find out our way. Do you remember this one? If you are a project manager, you probably realize that any activity you deal with, you need to understand when does it start and when does it finish. So as you can see, there are 4 aspects: the earliest start and the earliest finish. So if you are planning on an activity, you have to know these parameters. But also in project management, you also need the latest start. This means the latest time you can start with a task, and the latest finish, the latest time you can finish a task. However, if you have slack, means that you have some flexibility. If this number, my dear friends, is 0, means that earliest start and latest start are equal. And if you have this is 0 as well, means earliest finish and latest finish are equal. This means that you cannot mess with this task. Basically, this task is what we call it on the critical path. Because the slack is 0, this means that this task is very critical and you cannot mess with it. If you mess with it, the whole project is changed. And that is why you have to be very careful with your time. Managing your time is very important. Managing your resources is extremely important. This translates into something critical, and that is using all of these parameters. How can you put smart objectives? So resource planning and scheduling, how much effort are we putting into it? How do we go into the work time? This means that the value of time usually could be hours per day. Resources required, how many people do you need? And then productivity index. So as you can see, these 4 parameters are critical and they're very helpful to calculate, the resource planning scheduling. First, for how much effort do I need? Second, the working time, hours per day. Resources required, effort time divided by working hours. So as you can see, resources required, you divide this by this, you can get the number of people. And the productivity index, how much percentage of the work is being produced? I finished 90%, I finished 70%, and so on and so forth. And this way, you can start measuring the performance of people. Okay? So resource scheduling is also very important. In many ways, lots of the engineers, they have to understand the importance of scheduling. And leveling of the resources means that you have to utilize resources in the best time available. And you have to make sure that your resources are not tired, they're not working under pressure, but they're giving you the utmost results. Now, I am not naive, believe me. And in many ways, I fully understand that many of the projects have certain pressures. They have certain factors that prohibit them from being dealt with in a very professional, or you can say a detailed way or organized way. So we know that some projects do face problems, but at the end of the day, it goes back to your planning. As much as possible, if you plan correctly, you should be able to deliver a fairly good project. Now, Khalid is asking Jamal, what is float? Float is the slack time that you have. This means that if you have a slack or float of 2 days, this means that you can delay the project by 2 days before you start with it, or delay the task by 2 days before you start with it. However, if the float is 0, this means that you cannot delay the task at all. You have to deliver it based on the parameter. It's 0, means that you cannot mess around with it at all. Now, management through performance analysis. So here comes the very important part. How do we measure performance? Performance management is simply a method of assessing the progress towards stated goals. So when you meet with your team and you give them goals, it's very important that you measure their performance. And this performance management is not intended as an act for reward, not all the time, or a punishment. You see, the thing about it is that this performance management is intended as a communication and management tool to make your team better and to make your process better. So lots of people use performance management to either reward or punish. And, and in many ways, it could be true, but I use it as a communication management tool to foster the communication between manager and the employee. Now, it is very important also when you are working on a performance management system to shed some light on the weaknesses and strengths of the person. So first, it's important that you develop their strengths, and second, it's important that you help them improve their weaknesses. It's like a dashboard. So performance management is a dashboard in many ways, and that is why we like it, because it tells you what's going on, okay? And once you can manage it, okay, if you cannot measure it, you cannot manage it. So you cannot manage what you don't measure. And this is a very, very famous saying down there. Okay. So here comes the fourth question. Let me see if you are ready for this one. Here we go. Okay. Understanding the importance of strategic alignment between job objectives and company goals is critical for any engineers who would like to succeed as a manager. We already have some very, very interesting replies. Understanding the importance of strategic alignment between job objectives and company goals is critical for any engineer who would like to succeed as a manager. We'll give everybody a chance to answer it. I appreciate your participation, wonderful participation. Thank you so much. Abdul Malik is giving us some advice about describing scheduling better. Abdul Malik, I appreciate it greatly. And thank you for understanding the time restriction. But I want to tell you one thing. While our colleagues are answering the question, I like to share with you the fact that scheduling is not planning, okay? Scheduling is the ability to give proper dates to tasks. How do you distribute your tasks based on the time that you have? So every task has to be has a beginning date and an end date. And it's not planning. Planning comes first, but then scheduling follows. And it's part of organizing in many ways. So I hope that my explanation here helped you a little. Let me share with you what we have in here. So we're going to end the vote. We're going to share the results. So for those of you who said true, well done. When you transition from an engineer to a manager, please understand that now you have to work more with strategy. You have to understand the strategic aspects of the company. You have to work with your managers more and more. You have to work with upper management more. And you're going to be part of building strategies, not only the technical side of things. So you as a manager, you're taking on more planning responsibilities. And this is very critical for you to remember. So thank you for your voting. Here we go. Now, we go into the next slide. Setting goals is the first step in turning the invisible into visible. You probably have seen this gentleman, you have seen his videos, and he's quite, I would say, motivational person. His name is Anthony Robbins, as I can't agree with him more. Setting goals is the first step to turning the invisible to visible, and I tell you, I am a firm believer in this. We talk about these things always in our courses, and we apply it in our lives, and I would like you to take this as a small advice today, that anything that you do, make sure it is serving a goal that you have. So here we go. Setting goals are important. So it's very important that your goals are SMART based, and then always in writing. always followed by an action plan. And that's very important that you stick with the plan. So setting goals is very important. Make sure that they are smart. Make sure that they are done in writing. Make sure that you create an action plan to support it and stick with it. Now, goal is usually abstract statement. However, the objective takes more measures into it. It becomes more specific, measurable, and it becomes more attainable because we are making it more specific. So it serves the goal. This objective is serving the goal. It's serving the goal. Okay. Moving on. So this is probably you have seen this many times. You have seen it in your slides. Probably some people trained you on this. This is just a quick reminder. Specific means what exactly I'm doing. Measurable means how will you know that you are making any progress. Attainable, how realistic? Can I do it or not? Because remember, there's a difference between realistic and impossible. Relevant, is it related to my company? Is it important to my company? And is it relevant? And then is the time. When am I supposed to do it? So you as an engineer who is transitioning to a management role, you're going to be seeing yourself working a lot with the goals. You're going to be setting goals for your team or with your team. And I recommend that you do it with your team. And then you have the KPIs. And you know, the KPIs is the M in SMART. I always say that whenever you say measures, this means that it's the KPI. And as the word stands, KPI means a key performance indicator. It's an indicator or gauge of your performance. And your performance means that are you heading toward your goals? And are you serving something important? And this means is it the key thing? And at the end of the day, the KPI always answer the following. What happened in case there's a mistake or there's an error or something like that? And or a success. Why it happened this way? Because sometimes you might change the course or you might face obstacles. Is it going to continue like this? Because if you're facing problem and you're not fixing it, is it going to come around again? And what is your action plan? So in this case, even though you may have an action plan for your goal, you should also have an action plan to fix things when things happen. And this is where we find performance categories. And you can see when you are an engineer transitioning to a manager, you're going to be working with much more KPIs and performance categories. You could be working on productivity, people, miscellaneous, customer service, safety, financial sales. So as you can see, these are very interesting categories that we all deal with, especially when you become a manager. More and more of these gonna pop up in on your radar screen. So without the yardstick, there is no measurement. Without measurement, there is no control. I hope you remember this and take it with you for the rest of your life. So now we have to deal with others. So here comes the question. Written communication is the best method of reaching out. True or false? Let me share this with you. Let me see if this is the one. No, it is this one here. Yeah, written communication is the best method of reaching out. True or false? Very good. Excellent. We have some good uptake here. I want to thank all of you for your participation. We're almost done with the presentation. I just want to give you a hint here that we're almost done. So I want to appreciate you taking the time this Thursday afternoon. All right, I'm going to try to end the vote in a couple of seconds. Let's see if somebody else would like to vote first of all. And then let me end the vote now. Okay, great. Here are the results. So well done to all of you. You did very, very well. I'm very proud of you. So I'm going to stop the, okay, and then I'm going to go into this one. So, my dear friend, everybody is a salesperson. You as an engineer transitioning to a managerial role, you have to sell your ideas. You have to convince people. You have to inspire people. You might say, but I'm not a salesperson. Well, you're selling your ideas. You're trying to convince people. You're trying to influence people. And that in many ways is selling. Huh? So engineers must learn how to communicate and pass their ideas well if they wish to make a difference in their employment or influence others. And what is communication then? Communication is passing of a thought or idea from a sender to a receiver. So yes, there is a sender and a receiver. And then is what we do to give and get understanding. So it is a very important part of understanding that. And normally we show the communication in this way, where we have, you know, a sender and a receiver. We see a message going and a feedback being received. But remember something very important. You see the perceptions here. The perceptions are built based on the verbal and visual interchange. And then each person here is influenced by their attitudes, cultures, education, experience, and gender. And you can see how powerful these things can be, right? Because if you have a negative attitude, You may not want you may not be willing to listen to others. If you have a positive attitude, you might be willing to listen to others, and so on and so forth. Some cultures are more aggressive, some cultures are more docile, some cultures are more understanding. Education, where did you learn? Experience, where did you learn? Where did you acquire your experience and your work experience? And then gender, that by itself is already a challenge by itself. So when we talk about communication types, some of them are written, some of them are verbal, and some of them are non-verbal. And rest assured that if I tell you the non-verbal one is very powerful, and usually it takes a much higher percentage than you think. So moving on, why people don't communicate well? Well, because they have emotional blocks. And you as an engineer who's transitioning to a manager, you have to understand that how to deal with people now. And you cannot boss people around just like that. You have to understand what's sticking them. And they also come from different cultures. You have to understand the culture understanding. You have to have the culture sensitivity. And you have to understand the personality of the individual. So that takes a bit of an investment on your side to understand yourself and also understand others. So what defines a good communicator? What does he look like? How does he sound? How does she speak? How do they listen? All of these things are things that you have to take into consideration. However, verbal communication is not over when you finish delivering your message. Remember, when you deliver your message, you have to follow up with that individual, make sure that they are listening, that they understand it. Ask questions. It's very important that you ask the question. Did you understand it? Please repeat, please rephrase what I said. Always be aware of your body language. Body language is very, very powerful, and I would like to ask you to be always aware of your body language because whatever feelings you have inside are always projected outward. Now, are conflicts good? Of course, because when we're communicating with people, conflicts are going to happen. At the end of the day, we are humans, we have thoughts, we think differently, we give perceptions, and we have different interests and aspirations, so definitely a clash is going to happen. But some good news is that sometimes certain level of conflict is very good. And as you can see, based on this chart, if you can maintain a good level or a balanced level of conflict, you can really achieve very high performance. How can that be? Well, a good level of conflict and a healthy level of conflict can deliver some very good results on decision making as well as ideas. So some of the best ideas come out from the in conflicts. So that is why sometimes if you are managing a conflict, how you manage it makes quite a difference. So managing conflicts, the approach we use to handle conflict may not be the way that we prefer to manage a conflict, but it is an approach that we have used before, so it becomes a habit. So for example, if you are dealing with a conflict and you always dealt with the conflict in a certain way, here comes a conflict right in front of you and you apply a certain approach. Why? Because you are used to dealing with it that way. Remember situational leadership, which we talked about before, the same thing, conflict leadership, conflict management. Every conflict deserves its own style. So it's very important that you manage conflicts based on the need, based on the situation. Sometimes you have to pull out. Sometimes you have to be aggressive or more demanding. Sometimes you have to be more collaborative. Sometimes you have to go halfway. Sometimes you have to be accommodating. So all of these things are very important. And this takes us to the following. We call it the Thomas Kilmann conflict mode instrument. And as you can see, the things I talked about here, these two people have a very interesting, very interesting conflict mode instrument. It's called the Thomas Kilmann. And they talk about these 5 areas, which are based on assertiveness and cooperation. Now, problem solving and decision making. Here comes the last question. So I'd like to ask you the following question. You do not need to define a problem, just jump in and start fixing it. Let's see if you can share with us your reply. Very good. Thank you for your participation. Seriously, I'm very excited the way that you're answering these things. All right. So give 2 more seconds before I end the voting. All right, here comes number 6. Well done. Okay, so I'm going to share the results with you. Well, somebody changed the answer, and I'm glad you did. Well, of course, you don't need to define a problem and jump in and start the question. That's completely false. You have to make sure you define the problem. Once you define the problem, you solved it 50%. Believe it or not, defining the problem by itself is fixing the problem by 50%. Many studies show you that once you define the problem, you're already halfway there. Okay, so here we go back to the slides that we have. So please understand that when you are dealing with problems, you're going to have your share. As an engineer moving into a managerial role, you're going to have your share of problems. But it's always important to understand the overall situation. It's always important to identify the different problems. Always try to prioritize the problems. Always try to analyze the possible causes, identify the most possible cause, and take the corrective action chosen to remedy the cause of the problem. And the reason I say understand the possible cause, this means that the root cause in many ways. In our courses, we talk about two kinds of problem solving, several kinds of problem solving. The one we like is from Kapner and Trigo. Kapner and Trigo, they came up with a very, very interesting problem solving approach. Basically, you collect the information, which is right over here in the middle. But once you collect the information, you analyze the problem, and then you decide, you analyze your decision. Because once you have a problem, you decide, what do I need to do now? Which decision would I take? And then the potential problem analysis means that once I take that decision, what could be the consequences? Look how beautiful that is. This is, to me, is very, very exciting because it moves beyond the traditional problem solving. Many times we solve a problem and we just pull out. No, 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 no. That's not what we want. It's very important to analyze the problem. Once you have the problem analyzed, what are the different alternatives I have? Based on the alternatives you have to make the decision. But for each alternative, you have to find out what could be the best possible outcome of each one of them. Once you decide on the best possible solution or decision, then you ask yourself, what could be the potential problems from my decision? Now that is looking into the future quite a bit, and that's very exciting. That should help us in solving the problems in a very long way. Another way of looking at the problem is through what we call the fishbone approach. And this is what we call the Ishikawa diagram, where basically the Ishikawa diagram tells you that to put the problem right over here, state it, describe it, and then look at the main causes. Look at the main causes, and as you can see here, you have 5 or 6. And as you can see, it's funny, it looks like a fish, doesn't it? And then once you define the causes, look at the sub-causes. And once you look at the sub-causes, you start saying, what is the main possible, the top possible cause or causes? So you, out of this, you will come out with 2 or 3. I love this approach. I think it's one of the best approaches to solving problem. And I want to thank Mr. Ishikawa for coming up with that one. I think he did a fantastic job there. So, problem solving and decision making. Problem solving means finding the root cause and the deviation, not only the symptoms. And decision making means choosing from alternative courses of action. Otherwise, if you only have one alternative, I'm sorry guys, you're not making a decision. So, effective decision making is deciding which way to go. And sometimes it could be quite confusing and perplexing. And you as an engineer who is transitioning to a managerial role, you will find that this is one of the main competencies you have to acquire, is how to make decisions. With that, I'd like to thank you. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being with us for this afternoon. I want to thank you for taking the time. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you found it helpful. If you would like to have a copy, do let us know. Here are some references of the material that we usually develop our material on. For example, From Engineer to Manager is a wonderful book. This was written by Michael Alcoin, and the same thing with Transforming Performance Measurement. Also another wonderful book. And then you have the Leadership Challenge. This comes from James Kouzes as well. Very, very interesting writer. We have also Project Management Metrics, the 5 levels of leaderships, decision making and problem solving, and Stop Workplace Drama. This is something about how to manage conflicts and everything. And then with this, I'd like to share with you, here comes my email, so you can email me your request. If you need if you need a copy of the presentation, do let me know. I'll be more than happy to send it across. I am on LinkedIn, and you can find me there, as you can see here. This is my LinkedIn address. And next year, we will be running 3 sessions of this course. So if you're interested in joining us, do let us know. Keep notes of the dates. Other than that, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Sorry for more than expected, but I look forward to hear from you again. And stay tuned for future webinars. And thank you so much. And have a wonderful weekend. Take care.
Meirc.com